We are live. Welcome back to the Senate Committee on Government Operations for the first day of session, Tuesday, January 6th. We are joined by the Executive Director of the VSEA, the Vermont State Employees Association, Steve Howard. I was surprised I either read or heard you say you've been there 13 years.
I've been there 13 years.
Yeah.
And before that, he was with us in the house.
Yes. And I'm only 39, so it's really amazing.
Wow. Yeah.
Really amazing.
Very record. So welcome. We hopefully will be joined by Vince Aluzzi, who's the state's attorney in Essex County. He has an emergency kind of situation in a courtroom. I think he said he was in his car trying to do it on a digital device. But anyway, welcome in.
Thank you.
And we're delighted to have you today. And we'd love to have you tell us what your priorities are for the session.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, let me start by saying it's wonderful to be back in my favorite committee, my favorite senators.
Bothering us up yet again.
And you know, all good things come from Rome.
True.
Right on.
Well, the head and the tail of the table.
That's right. That's right. Well, let's see. We have a few priorities. One is to keep Senator Aluzzi from speaking to legislators this year. It's my goal to try to keep them, arm's length from each legislator. He seems to be violating that already. So we'll have to re-examine that New Year's resolution and see if I can find something more workable.
You can tell them about the single point of entry in some others.
Yeah, right. God. So VSEA has a number of issues that we've been working on and have been working on for a while that come into the purview of your committee. I don't know if this is the year when there's an omnibus VSEA bill, but we would maybe encourage that and think about that. I think there are components of everything in our laundry list of wishes that maybe could win support here, win support on the floor, and potentially be signed by the governor. Which I know is important for everybody to consider. Just a few things just to point out, and you're all veterans of this. I know you're fairly new to this committee, so this might be a good information for you, but I'd encourage the committee members to become familiar, if you're not already, with the employee satisfaction survey. It's the employee engagement survey that is sent out by the administration, by the Department of Human Resources. I believe Tom Abenor emailed it to the committee. If he hasn't, he will. And just look at all the data in there, and you'll see that the three agencies that have the highest level of unsatisfied employees are the DMV, the DOC, and the Agency of Education. And those, at least the last two, have been pretty consistent for the last decade.
Yeah.
It might be an issue of importance that triggers a call the Commissioner of HR, Secretary of Administration, the leaders of these agencies to say, what are you going to do to bring that unsat rate down among your employees? That might be something to look at. Return to commute.
Can I just? Haven't you done that? I mean, isn't that a question VSEA should be asking Beth's office and understand?
We can, but we don't have the oversight role that they would pay attention to. That we can ask them about that, but they don't report to us. So the answer we get is very different than they would give the folks who oversee their budget and oversee their agency. So we definitely do it, but
the least happy in order of scale, was it DMV first, then DOC?
I think DOC is the highest with a 40% dissatisfaction rate. And DMV is 35%, AOE is 30%. And what's interesting about this is that engagement survey also includes the opinion of managers. So it's not all just our members, it also includes folks who are not in bargaining unit. But it would be good to ask the administration in your oversight role, like, what's your plan to improve that? To ask the Secretary of Education and Secretary of Transportation, the Commissioner of DOC, and the Secretary of AHS, what's their plan to improve how their employees feel about working in their agencies, given that they're the highest three in state government, and fairly substantial agencies that are important to Vermonters. So
How does the dissatisfaction rate correlate with the current vacancy rate, or does it?
You know, it's funny. I was just thinking 2 seconds ago, you took the words right out of my mouth. I have the overall vacancy rate for the state, but as I understand, the vacancy rate in AOE and DOC in particular are fairly high. Now, the DOC, well, actually, I do have those numbers. At least for DOC, the vacancy rate is 11%. But the question you really have to ask, which I did not come prepared for, is what's the vacancy rate in the CO1 classification? Because that's the classification, that's the entry level classification that has the massive turnover that generates the 16-hour shifts, that generates people leaving corrections before they end their service. But I don't know the other two agencies. I do know AOE's vacancy rate historically has been pretty high.
Well, particularly in the last 4 years, it's been 5 years.
And you hear it sometimes from superintendents, they'll say it's slows down response from the agency. I have heard, and in the education committee, I believe they're taking testimony on the agency reorganization at AOE. And I have heard conflicting feedback about how that's going and how people feel about that. So it may be something consistent with their role of looking at education, you might want to look at, because certainly in all of the discussion about education, having the most functional agency of education possible is probably helpful in that regard. I would say the other thing that has been taking a lot of our time is the whole, what we call the return to commute campaign. As you know, the governor directed in a press conference, really without speaking with any of us, the new VSEA or any members, that he was going to return state employees who have been working very successfully for the last 6 years from home to office space, often to office space that doesn't exist. It was met, as you may have heard from your constituents, with not so positive a response from employees, from our members, many of whom moved out of state for a variety of reasons, with permission of their employer, or who were hired with the knowledge that they would live out of state. Many live in various portions of the state, Northeast Kingdom, Bennington, Brattleboro, Rutland, and had been able to tap into the jobs that are available in central Vermont and in Chittenden County. You know, we often hear, and with all due respect to the senator from Chittenden, you hear from a lot of Vermonters that there's Vermont and then there's Chittenden County. Well, when you want to share the wealth in the county with the rest of the state through return to commute opportunities, governor shutting that right off and saying, no, you have to live in Washington County, you have to live in Chittenden County, or you have to be willing to drive an hour and a half, an hour both ways in winter weather, and try to get to your child care facility on time so you don't have to pay the extra fee to pick your kid up. Since this was done in September, when the after school programs were all shut down and you couldn't get any more kids into after school programs. So there's extra costs associated with it to our members, but there's also a very substantial cost for the taxpayers. Leasing additional space in Waterbury is going to cost at least $3 million. We'd rather see that money spent to increase the wages of the member, rather see that spent on housing, rather see that spent on home heating assistance. We do not think we have to lease space from somebody who has a very close relationship with the governor at $3 million a year for space that we haven't needed in the last 6 years.
So may I just interject here, John, that the space issue has been exacerbated by the flooding of 2023, and actually the state lost a significant 17 buildings.
Yeah, so we sold a major building in Chittenden County.
It's a huge, surprising number of buildings that are still not back online.
And it's essentially the Department of Health, which was so heroic during the pandemic and does such great work for our state. They were displaced, as was Economic Services and a few other agencies, when we sold the Zampieri building. The Economic Services landed in Burlington, but Health was moved to Waterbury, and the compromise with the then commissioner, who has since retired, was that they could work from home, because almost all of them live in Burlington or live in Chittenden County. They have childcare in Chittenden County, their adult daycare in Chittenden County, everything's in Chittenden County. And unfortunately, we're leasing space in order to house them in Waterbury, which, you know, the return to commute from our members' perspective is a bad idea and a waste of taxpayers' funds. It's going to cost us valuable employees. But at least if you were going to lease space for the health department, you could maybe ask them, would it be more convenient to do that in Chittenden County than to make them all drive 3 days a week to Waterbury for no reason. And it's, you know, we're looking at some experts that might come in and talk with you about it. If you were to hold an oversight hearing on how our members would certainly, I'm sure, be willing to come share their stories. But the Sloan School of Management at MIT and Baylor University have done extensive research on the impacts of return to commute. And, you know, MIT, I went to Boston College, so I don't really, I'm not that impressed with MIT. If it's a Boston College study, I might be more impressed, but I'm pretty impressed with MIT. You know, they said, look, the results are in from the private sector's effort to force people back to the office. And what's happened is that the best and the brightest have left. They have gone to jobs that allow them to commute. The other thing that's really happened is that
Work remotely.
work remotely. The other thing that's happened is that women have left and they've taken a pay cut in order to have a job that allows them to work remotely. Return to commute has a disproportionate impact on women and on minorities. You don't have to ask me, you know, ask the Vermont Commission on Women that has spelled out in detail to the Secretary of Administration what the impacts could be. So I would encourage you to have the Secretary of Administration in to testify on what data she relied on to make this and that the governor relied on to make this decision. What studies did they read, and who did they talk to about this? Because it wasn't the state employees who were affected by it.
And what's the current requirement? They can come into office 3 days out of 5, I think.
They're required to be there 3 days out. They had a minimum of 3 days. Some are coming in more.
Okay. Senator Migoski.
I know as this was being sort of unfolded, there was, and just because I'm in Chittenden County, I assure you I've heard plenty of concerns about this. There was a lot of concern around how it was happening and the sort of chaos even within the office in terms of like not having fixed workplaces and planning to go for a certain day, but then not having an available workspace. Can you speak to whether or not that has quieted down or if it is still pretty chaotic?
It's still pretty chaotic. I understand that the delayed in Waterbury, at least some agencies have the implementation of the governor's mandate has been delayed in order to accommodate for some of that. They are moving, I think, DEVA to a new building. They're still moving all around. And what unfolded during the rollout of this proposal was complete and total chaos. Supervisors, I mean, I have to just tell you honestly, my assessment based on the number of managers who have called me, outside people who were not in the bargaining unit, and said, half my staff is leaving or looking for another job. What do I do? And I said, tell the governor, tell the Secretary of Administration. You know, I can't help you. You got to tell the administration. I think the governor and maybe his political staff are the only people who think this is a good idea. I can tell you by the just sheer experience I've had with the number of managers throughout state government who work directly for the governor. Some of them who say this is a nightmare. It's really, it on the surface looks like an easy issue, like just drive into work. And, you know, some people have to drive into work. So then everybody should have to drive into work. It's very easy to explain it that way. But when you look under the hood, it's more complicated. And it has a negative impact on the taxpayer.
Senator Fox.
So it is interesting how our world has shifted in a mere 5 years. So 5 years ago, they were all going into work every day. So it is interesting how COVID has shifted both work habits and expectations mightily. Who was it that just ruled that the court that it was fine to order this? The court, either the court or somebody just ruled that it was that the governor was in.
They ruled on our motion up for a preliminary injunction, and while they
did not give you that.
No, they found they had this had never been done in Vermont before. So
didn't have the authority.
The court found that they had the authority to issue the injunction. And you have to prove irreparable harm, based on some of the testimony from the administration, which we know not to be reflective of what's really happening. They said that they thought the exemptions that were being provided address the issue of irreparable harm. And they said the labor board has jurisdiction over this issue, and the labor board can ask for an injunction. And so the labor board, we have a hearing on February 5th. There's 3 hearing dates before the labor board on whether we filed an unfair labor practice and a grievance that is at the labor board, because we think this is an issue that is clearly a bargainable issue.
Yeah.
On the national level, the NLRB, National Labor Relations Board, in an interesting case that actually involves employees at Goddard College, found that where an employee works is an issue that is bargainable. But that's a national decision. And so now it has not been decided in Vermont. And so we hope at the end of this process that they will find it is a bargainable issue and that the governor is required to come bargain with us about it.
Senator White.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we had discussed at one point, I'm getting back into old habits. I'm getting formal.
It always brings a smile to the face.
I remember over the off session, there was a discussion potentially of having like a public hearing where folks were going to come. And what I learned through that process was it wasn't clear to me what we as a legislature could do about this move. You know, no matter how you feel about it, I wasn't really sure what our purview was. So I guess that's really a main question. And I don't know if that's, you're welcome to answer it, but that might be something we ask generally of legislative council as well.
I'm glad you asked it. There's a couple of things you could do immediately. First of all, you could refuse to fund the leases in Waterbury.
Okay.
And that would be something that could be done in a budgetary standpoint. Like the taxpayer should not have to spend that $3 million in office space we don't need. The other thing I think it's really we're going to ask you to do, and I think we've found somebody to introduce the bill, is to look at the flexible work arrangement statute, which does exist, and unfortunately the administration is ignoring. That is a statute that says that employees can have for flexible work arrangements, and there's no language in the current statute, that says that you have to ask for a compelling reason or specific reasons. You can ask for any reason. And it'd be good to hear from the Human Rights Commission that enforces that law on how they feel the administration is and whether the administration is in compliance with that law. That would be good to hear from them. I don't know, they're quasi-judicial, so I'm not sure if they would testify. They might come in general and speak about it. I know they're very interested in it. They were parties to our hearing on the injunction. I think they've sent a cease and desist letter to the administration. And we've seen some minor tweaks in their administration's language as a result of that, but no change in the way they're handling the statute. So, you know, that's another piece of this that we think is really important.
I think Senator Dubowski had her enough for you.
We did. I was wondering, oh, were you not done?
No, but you had a third thing. You said there are 3 things we can do. And I got refuse to fund leases, flexible workplace.
Yeah, what's the third thing?
Or maybe there isn't a public hearing.
Definitely a public hearing. I mean, we had a hearing, some of you may have attended with the Working Vermonters Caucus. And we had something like 800 people on their lunch hour, and so many people that the Zoom crashed.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the SCA's experience with we were having some just member information sessions about this, because this really upended people's lives, and they didn't know what they might have to quit their job in order to figure out how to take care of their kids and live their life. And we would have anywhere from 300 to 500 of our members come out for those lunchtime meetings. So it's an issue that it has a very strong impact on our members. And I'll be clear, like not 100% of our members agree with the position we take on this. And a lot of our members do have to report to the office, but there's no reason to increase the cost of the taxpayer and really make employees dissatisfied and unhappy just because some folks have to report to the work site. That doesn't pass the straight face test. We want as many happy employees as we can find, and as many diverse places as we can find them. And as many diverse employees as we can find. And we want to do it at a in a cost effective way to the taxpayer. We don't want to charge them $3 million more for leases that we don't need.
Senator Bielski.
Yeah, so my question is sort of going back, you said the NLRB had ruled that this is bargainable. How similar are the statutes around our Vermont Labor Board and the National Labor Board?
I think I should have our legal department discuss it, but I think typically the VLRB tends to follow the example of the NLRB. And in this case, they haven't. So we're hopeful that they haven't issued any decision yet. They've never had, I think, an opportunity to do that. So this will be maybe their first opportunity to weigh in, and we hope that they will weigh in on the side of the employees. And it doesn't mean that, what it means is that the governor just would bring it to a halt. The governor would have to then come to the bargaining table and meet face to face with employees, which frankly, if you ask me from just a managerial perspective, even if he didn't agree that it is a bargainable issue, and clearly the administration doesn't, coming to sit down with the employees face to face and talking through the issues and seeing if we could resolve those before it's announced at a press conference would have been helpful.
Yeah.
Members felt really disrespected.
Like, we're thinking of doing this. What's,
yeah, I mean, it just,
what do you feel like?
and then the meetings that we had with them, we had one meeting with them in which we asked a series of questions, and the answer was, we don't have that information. We don't have any data. We don't know the answer to that. We didn't get anything that helped our members that were on the verge of trying to figure out how to reorganize their life in order to comply with the mandate. Or a lot of people, there's three pieces to this. There's folks who can request an accommodation under the ADA, the Americans with Disability Act, and that has a certain procedure in federal law that the administration has to follow. There's the state's flexible work arrangement, which also has a procedure that the state's supposed to follow. They're not doing that. They are doing it, I think, with the RAs, but they're taking forever. They're very slow to review them. And we've got a lot of reports from our members of meetings that are required by the federal law in which our members felt attacked and belittled because of their request for accommodation. In fact, they've often asked that, can we send a union rep? But there are so many requests for accommodations, we don't have the staff to do that. We can advise them. We've created video advice about how to approach the meeting, but they're very intimidating meetings, and they're about some very personal things.
Yeah.
And all of this is unnecessary because what we've been doing for 6 years has worked effectively. If you look at the governor's own research, his own engagement survey, the last 2 years, when asked if people felt remote work helped them be collaborative, they all up to 80 to 90% said it helps them to be more collaborative. It helps them to be more productive. So the governor's actually putting in place a policy that our members feel will make them less likely to collaborate and less productive, which is also a hit at the taxpayers. And so I feel like this is a policy that the government oversight, the Government Operations Committee could provide significant oversight because it impacts our members, but it severely hampers the taxpayer. And I'd also say that you've worked very hard on housing. Housing is clearly a top issue. The reason people live an hour and a half to 2 hours away is because in the last 6 years, they were told they could work remotely and they couldn't find housing in Montpelier, Waterbury, or Burlington. And so you can't go and give a speech about how we don't have housing and then tell people they have to live in some of the most expensive communities in the state, or commute an hour and a half or 2 hours. It's just inconsistent. Just wrong.
Follow up to the question about the Vermont Labor Board. And this is sort of coming from my judiciary lens. I know a lot of times, our courts are to follow, and sometimes they sort of kick back and say, like, if that puts you off, put it in statute. Would it be helpful or precedented to sort of put in statute that this is a collective bargaining issue?
I'm going to be careful about how I answer that.
Okay.
I don't want to trigger an unfair labor practice, which we have to be careful about.
Okay.
I'd have to do a little bit more research on that.
Okay.
We can't come to the State House and ask, neither party can come to the State House to ask the legislature to do something that was a subject of bargaining. It may be potentially, if a decision comes from the labor board that's adverse to our position, that might free us up to do that, because then they'd say, well, it wasn't a bargaining issue.
Okay.
So I think maybe if there's some clarification from the board, it might help.
Okay. And I guess my sort of underlying question there is there a precedent? Are there other places where the legislature directs that this shall be bargained for?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
yes, definitely.
Senator Flex?
So how many people of the 8,000 DSEA members, how many people at this point are affected? How many people at the moment is this a real problem for?
Well, we have 6,000 members.
I thought
It's 8,000 total employees, 6,000. I wish we had 8,000 members.
We fill some of those vacancies, maybe we can get.
Yeah, we're working toward that goal, definitely. But we have a little over 6,000 members. I don't know that we've counted how many people this impacts specifically. Other than to say that the people who have actively participated anywhere from 500 to 1,000 people. So it's hard for us to estimate how many people specifically it impacts because not everybody reaches out to us about it. If they are just, they may just be trying to comply with whatever the administration put out. Although it was fairly confusing because supervisors did not know what to say. Managers did not know what to say for the longest period of time. And they would just say, this is all being driven by the agency of administration, and we don't know what to tell you. And the exceptions process also left a lot to be desired because what was happening was supervisors were being told to deny the request for exceptions and not let it get up to the Secretary of Administration. And some supervisors just refused to do that. And they just said, okay, so I'm not doing it because this doesn't make any sense. And so it's a little bit, that process was really a nightmare. But anyway, I'd encourage you to take a deeper dive into that issue. Staffing is constantly an issue in the state. We have 881 vacancies, which is, for a while we're running over 1,000. The 27% vacancy rate in the Department of Mental Health, which is mostly at the psychiatric care hospital, and 27% also at the Vermont Veterans Home, which is mostly among nursing staff. So we pay a lot of money for traveling nurses as a result of that. So there's an issue that I think would be interesting to look at from a government operations perspective. I mentioned the 11% of the COs. I've just spent a significant amount of time with our COs and correctional facilities across the state in the last 6 months. They're exhausted, more than I've ever seen. And in Newport in particular, which is up in your neck of the woods, it's a humanitarian crisis up there. And the administration's response to it is like nonchalant, slower than death, not an emergency situation. And yet that is not what we hear on the ground from our members. They have had it. And so I think the holdup is that we can't rearrange the chairs on the Titanic. We need more resources in order to attract and retain staff. The number one issue is the 16-hour shifts. There's a ton of other issues in corrections, but what's driving people to quit the 16-hour shifts and sort of the chaotic approach that the management's taking to dealing with the lack of that.
16-hour shift.
So I want to go back and we'll get to Senator Bielski again. To the unsatisfactory surveys. I definitely can understand the DOC employees being just absolutely frustrated with 16-hour shifts. I'm a little puzzled about DMV.
Yeah.
What data did you sort of get from the survey that said, why are they dissatisfied? And also I'm a little mystified about AOE.
Yeah, I don't, the survey doesn't go into why.
Oh,
But I think that's part of maybe what public hearings could determine, and we certainly could bring. We could try to if we could find members who are willing to testify publicly because they're worried about retaliation. We could certainly poll them and relay to you what they say.
yeah. Senator
Mr. Chair, thank you. Steve. So the governor's wanting workforce to go back to work. And
They've always been working.
No,
back to the
office.
Yeah.
And I just heard you say that they're just as effective, just as efficient for working from home. But that was going to be my question. Does the administration say that too?
What the administration has said is, well, people will be better collaborators if they're in the same office.
Okay.
And the data shows the opposite. Their own opinions as employees is that,
So what's
Yeah.
driving the administration to do this?
there's a lot of theories. Yeah, I can just relate the theories. One is pressure from the downtowns that want customers.
I mean, particularly I'm feeling devastated by the flooding and then just with nobody back, they're having a brutal time.
So
They are.
businesses, small businesses.
Yeah.
That's one thing. And, you know, when
Waterbury too.
we've encouraged for the last 6 years, we've encouraged the administration and the state to look at the available space in the downtowns and convert those spaces to housing. I encourage you to look at the program that Mayor Michelle Wu has led in Boston, where she is converting office space. You know, a city the size of the state of Vermont, somehow Michelle Wu can do it, but in Vermont, it's a huge impossible task. We couldn't possibly do it. That would have helped downtown and will help downtown in a more sustainable way than forcing people to drive 2 hours into office. I mean, there's an incentive to bring a bag lunch if you're really mad at the people who have made you drive 4 hours to work every day, back and forth. There are conspiracy theories about who owns the buildings in Waterbury. They're getting the leases. One of the owners is a close friend of the governor's who has contributed to the governor and has purchased businesses from the governor. And I know that person, and he's a very nice person and a nice guy, but it looks bad for space that we don't need. That's another theory that is on the table. The other is that it's a way to align politically with folks in Vermont who might be supporters of President Trump by following a similar policy of President Trump, who did the exact same thing when he became president. So those are the theories I have heard most from our members, but none of it really. We've never heard from the governor why, other than the collaboration argument. We haven't heard really consistently. We haven't heard really any data-driven analysis as to why this makes sense.
That's kind of what I was, and then also years ago, I remember on appropriations, we dealt with a huge unfunded liability in the retirement account.
Yeah.
Is that?
We fixed it.
Is it?
While you were gone, we worked.
Yeah, we took care of that.
That was-
We're on our way.
Jack Kitchell.
We've had actually really good returns.
Okay. Good.
And we're on our way. 2038 is the target date for full funding.
Boy, that's awesome.
But we
That's
reached a
exciting.
compromise. And Jane Kitchell was like, I remember sitting in the Danville Inn with Jane Kitchell. We call those meetings burnt toast summits. She eats her toast burnt. And they know it at the Danville Inn. And she walks in, it's like the queen walked in. It's like, but we had great meetings with her, and she came in and really did a great job with Senator White from this committee and the colleagues in the House at a compromise proposal that did result in pretty significant improvement of that situation.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, it's good. We're on our way. We're quite where we want to be yet, but we're getting there. Right. Senator White, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You want to go? That's fine.
Yeah, I was just gonna say to your theories point, the theory that I've heard that you hadn't expressed was that it was an attempt to purposefully have people leave their jobs
Oh, yeah, I've heard that too.
to have more vacancy savings. I think that's the nastiest rumor I've heard,
Yeah.
is that it is part of a purposeful way to have savings, knowing that people will leave their jobs. So the idea that people are leaving their jobs is not a negative, it's
Yeah.
actually a positive. Because you get a vacancy savings, which seems
Yeah.
to be somewhat relied upon in the creation of this budget. That's the nastiest rumor I've heard.
Yeah.
But then I also do think to be positive about it, I think there is a sense that there are managers who want to return to how business was prior to COVID and
Yeah.
kind of have a nostalgia for the office culture and the camaraderie of that culture, and feel that that has just been zapped from
Yeah.
from that. So I do think there is a real honest good reason why there were certain people pushing for it. Whether or not the outcome of that is occurring is different, but I do think there are people who genuinely see it as a different management style that they would like to return. So
I think
there's my view.
it's called, I'm glad you raised it, because actually that is another theory that I have heard, that it's what they call a quiet riff.
Yeah,
It's easier politically to try to force people to quit than to actually send them a RIF notice. If you have budget challenges or you want to reduce the size of government. So that is one thing. I also think there is, and generationally, there is a change in the way we view work. COVID, I think, had a major impact on it. I managed several people at the SCA. We all work remotely. We're all better and more productive in that atmosphere. And that's what I call the end of the surveillance culture. The idea that the only way you can get an employee to be productive is to micromanage them, to stare them down, to watch every move, and to know what they're doing every single minute. And to me, that is like the least productive way of getting people to be. It's like if you're a leader, people will follow you if they know you treat them, if you've treated them well and respect them, and mostly that you trust them. I think a lot of our members communicated similar to what you just said, a feeling of being disrespected by the governor. And not, they were trustworthy enough to get them through a pandemic and 2 floods, but not trustworthy enough to work from their kitchen or work from their home, except when we had to have them work from their kitchen and their home. And they did that. Did that very well. The only other thing, I don't want to just get stuck on this, that the governor, I think, made a mistake. And I'm going to say, I don't want to pick on the governor. I like the governor. My job is to hold him accountable for our members. And the legislature's job is to hold him accountable. It's a tough job. He gets paid big bucks and he signed up for it, So I'm sure he understands this. But the governor went on Vermont Public Radio, and when there was 100 people lined up to speak to him, their governor, people who work for the state of Vermont live in Vermont. He is their governor. He said to the host, "I want to speak to everyday Vermonters. I don't want to hear any more from state employees." State employees are everyday Vermonters. Everyday Vermonters. They plow your roads. They're mopping floors and cleaning toilets. They're nurses. They're social workers. They're doing some of the most impossible work that nobody wants to do. And they don't make a ton of money doing it. And so there was also the theory that there was an attempt to divide state employees from the rest of the taxpayers. And so our members asked me to communicate that they are taxpayers and that they're everyday.
They are regular.
I mean, you see Mike. Mike is out here cleaning the Capitol. He's a state employee.
Right.
God, he must have been let out of the court. I almost made it.
I got out on conditions.
Good. So I won't belabor the point there, but corrections is we have a new commissioner of corrections, and I met him once.
Is it the interim still?
I don't know. I
I
think
believe it is.
he might
I
be.
believe it's still an interim.
I had a good meeting with him. I would encourage him to shed central office, to get out of central office, and to make decisions in the break rooms of the correctional facilities. So, like for instance, I encouraged him. I think this would be fair to say, before he pulled out a special team that was helping cover some shifts in Newport. That's called a cost team. I said, don't listen just to the managers in central office. Go sit in the break room at 5:30 in the morning and again at 4:30 in the afternoon and ask the correctional officers. Because what central office thinks is happening and when these guys think is happening is 2 different things. Same thing with some of the P&P offices. Would you go talk to them directly and don't wear a suit, don't bring your entourage, don't send your henchmen, just go down. And I said to him, that will shock people because they're used to the entourage and the dog and pony show and never really getting to talk to the commissioner, but they see him come in and go. It hasn't taken me up on that advice yet. I've also urged him, and maybe we can work together on this. There are a group of managers in central office who are trained to work in correctional facilities, trained at Vermont taxpayers' expense. They could help right now by going to Newport and working some of the overtime shifts there. The commissioner would have to direct them to do that. And that's an important thing that could happen. The other thing is, we've worked very hard, and I know the chair has a bill in support of this issue. Our men and women in the probation and parole offices are experiencing workplace violence and workplace safety at unprecedented levels. And they have fought very hard to join the 35 other states that allow them to carry a defensive weapon. And we are hopeful that the governor will direct the commissioner to allow them to carry a defensive weapon only for the purposes of defending their life when they're being shot at, not to do anything else. Right now, they have pepper spray and a bulletproof vest. But they're up against automatic weapons. They're up against
In jail, they aren't.
in probation and parole officers.
Oh, probation.
Yeah, so when they're going out to check people, they're often going to places that the police won't go in. But our men and women in probation and parole are supposed to go in. Same thing is happening in DCF. And family service workers, economic service workers are being asked to go into places, hotel rooms, homes, that law enforcement and corrections won't go in. And they're completely unarmed, untrained, and unprepared for what they find.
We heard this at our
Yes.
meeting in White River.
Mhm.
It's very dangerous. And we're toying with the law. We've already had one family service worker murdered brutally. We're toying with the lives of so many of these employees, these everyday Vermonters who are risking their lives to protect children, make sure people have housing, that they're fed, and that the public is kept safe from people who have committed violent crimes or accused of committing violent crimes.
Senator Bielski.
So I have two questions. Circling back to the DOC, I want to be clear, I'm opposed to people working 16-hour shifts, especially for 16-hour shifts. But this strikes me as a bit of a cyclical issue where they're working 16-hour shifts because they don't have enough staff, which creates less staff. And I'm wondering how you see it that we get off that track, because there
Yeah.
aren't the workers to
Right.
cover the shifts.
Great question. So first of all, you send the training managers from central office to
Right. That was one of yours.
all of us, all means all. We're all in this together. Secondly, I think what I would do is heavy incentives for working on your day off, and also heavy incentives for probation and parole, and for former corrections staff that have gone through the academy, who are now working in AOT or DCF, who left DOC mostly because of the 16-hour shifts. Would they come in and work some of the overtime? But you have to spend money to do that. I'm not asking the legislature to appropriate money. I'm not asking you to do that. But I am asking that the legislature hold the commissioner and the governor, who is responsible for running the Department of Corrections, accountable for what had been a 6-year crisis that's getting so bad, in particular in Newport. If I were the governor, I'd go to Newport and I'd sit in the break room and I would talk to those people.
Have you invited him to do that?
We've invited him several years ago. We invited the governor to visit a correctional facility. He went to the academy.
So why don't you invite him again?
We will. We definitely will. But if there's a crisis, it makes us wonder if he knows how bad the crisis is, because he's been a great crisis leader through COVID and so many things. Where is the crisis leader now? We're in a crisis. Does it? I know in New Hampshire they called in the National Guard to help. I'm not sure if that's an answer, but at least they did something. And here they're just doing very well. Another area that's really important to our members to talk about is state's attorneys.
I actually had a second question.
Oh, I'm
before we
sorry.
move on to state's attorneys.
I apologize.
It tracks into what you were previously talking about. And so it was interesting to me to hear the top three for the lowest satisfaction in the top three least satisfied. Was AOE. I mean, DOC doesn't surprise me. And DMV, where does DCF fall on that list? Because I certainly recall hearing testimony as to why we could not implement raise the age, that DCF was basically falling apart at the
Yeah.
seams. And I'm wondering, has that changed?
Well, DCF's a huge agency. It's 1,000 people and there's several divisions. So that particular issue was related to the lack of a facility. This is going to be, I have PTSD from this discussion, because we begged Secretary Smith at the time not to close Woodside, to renovate it, change it, reform it, but don't close it. And instead he closed it, and the alternatives have not materialized. So the real problem, I think, with the raise the age issue is that the burden of what did fall on trained residential counselors at Woodside, which at one point before the administration made some changes, was a nationally recognized award-winning program. They made some changes that led it to, including making some hiring decisions for leadership there that severely changed the atmosphere from one that was reformed, more of a rehabilitative atmosphere, to one that was more of a correctional atmosphere. That I think had more to do, and has more to do with the fact that family service workers were being called out after they were working their full shift to go sit with kids who were sometimes violent, and not some is not any fault of their own, because they just being the violence came as their only way of expressing these things. But it's led our members to be as exhausted as correctional officers, battered and bruised, all because we don't have a Woodside. And several years have gone by, and the administration's approach to communities has failed, which we said would happen. We said, you will not find another community that will take this facility. And they haven't. The facility they're using now, Marble Valley Regional Correctional Facility, is where our kids are going.
And so what I heard in testimony, though, when we were having that conversation, was not just about lack of a facility. It was an agency or a division that was in complete and utter chaos, with no leadership, no support. And I'm wondering if that has changed. There are plenty of places in the world that manage to not have violent children that don't put them in prison. So I just also want to be very clear that locking children in prison is not the only answer.
It's not that we don't think they should be in prison.
Not even if we call it a children's prison.
Yeah, no, we think the facility should look very different than what Woodside looked like. But what we said to them is, you have to tear the building down and rebuild it right there, or rebuild it right there. But don't close it down. Don't let these trained residential counselors walk away and lose their jobs, because we're going to lose all that talent. And so I agree with you on that part. I would say there is a new commissioner of DCF who has more of a human services background. I don't know much about her. I've only met her. I don't even think I've ever met her. I just saw her at a labor management meeting. I do think some of the things that they have done, they've implemented there, have been somewhat effective, like the CATS team, which is the idea that I've presented to corrections. It's a similar idea, which is to basically say to AHS employees or any state employees, if you're willing to be trained and you come sit with the youth, we'll pay you to do that in addition to the other job that you have. I think that's a model for corrections. I told the commissioner that, and I would encourage him to follow that idea and explore that idea, because we certainly need it. But I think the description that you had, Senator, of DCF at least in the last legislative session, was an accurate description. Chaos was reigning. The high-end system of care was just really, I think, destroying the agency, and people were leaving in rapid numbers, which then exploded caseloads. It's the same thing as corrections. It's difficult, but state's attorneys last year, supporting the department's request, VSEA tried very hard to get 20 additional positions for state's attorneys. The model program that's been set up in Chittenden County, the reports back from our members is that it's massively overburdening the administrative staff and the victim advocate staff, as well as the judicial staff, because there was no additional staff added to the governor's program. There was a prosecutor moved from Washington County, which, as a resident of Washington County, I'm pretty upset about, because our crime fought in West Washington County, and he should be here in Washington County. There was no additional support staff, no additional victim advocates, no additional judicial staff. Some wonder if maybe hiring retired prosecutors to come back, like as they hired a retired judge, instead of just having one prosecutor plucked from a county and brought up there. I think our members believe that there were no additional resources added to this program, and from their perspective, it makes it look like a PR effort and not a real effort. It's having some effect, I think, but it's coming at the cost of our administrative team which in Chittenden County in particular is feeling a lot of the pressure that they are going to need help with.
Turn it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to dig a little bit more into that. So I'm confused. I thought we did something last year where we added, so is this the
We
same?
have over the course.
We converted,
We've done,
We
did
did
have
some,
last year we converted 9 limited service positions into permanent classifieds.
and that didn't resolve.
That
Did.
kept those 9 people from quitting.
Okay.
But it didn't
Okay.
add the 20 people that we needed.
Okay,
And
so,
the 20 was a minimum. We have probably could use more than that, but
and, okay, yes, I agree with you on that, but that is disappointing because I kind of thought that would have helped alleviate that issue.
yeah, I think it's that, it's happening. I would encourage the committee to take a look at the public safety, maybe in conjunction with the judiciary, the public safety program. Because from our members' perspective, yes, more state troopers have been employed to Church Street. A prosecutor has been assigned and a judge has been assigned to the repeat offenders in Chittenden County. The 2 things that we haven't done are add more prosecutors and more support staff and which someone's got to prosecute these folks.
Yes.
And the second thing is we haven't hired correctional officers because when we take them off the street, as the public says, where do they go? They go to corrections, they go to probation and parole, and those are the people working this 3-hour shifts. And that's why our facilities are packed at the brim. So it would be a good opportunity to look at that issue overall and just see, is this really, have we done have we really looked at the public safety system in a holistic way?
I think judiciary.
I think that would be important. And I'll just go quickly.
just to tag on that, given I'm very clear on the need for more prosecutors. Is that something that would be a good job for a task force for the summer? I mean, is that that's a big review.
I think that you could do that. I think we're in a little bit of an urgent situation.
Right.
And so where the caseloads are really exploding, I think maybe
Maybe just a
making
big public hearing.
making recommendations to appropriations that they prioritize those public safety positions.
Okay, last question, Senator.
Well, it's a response to Senator Clarkson's question, and I think I can, for the 3 years that I have served in the Senate, we have started every year with a joint House Senate Judiciary hearing where we hear from the judiciary and the state's attorneys about the scope of the problem, what they need, and then we promptly ignore it. And so I don't think there's a need for a public hearing. I think we know the answer. We actually just need to listen.
And do something about it. Well, we did do something about it, because I remember we added quite a bit 2 years ago.
We added 1/3 of what they asked for 2 years ago.
But we,
And we did it as limited service. And then last
Which
year
was
we
very
simply, so last year we didn't do anything. We
Right.
simply said, actually, these 9 positions we added a year ago out of the 18 or 24 you asked for, we're not gonna get rid of them.
Yeah.
that's,
But
But
half of this limited service.
We've actually heard every single year that I've been on judiciary in the Senate, what is needed and what the problem is. So I don't think there's a need for a task force. I think that work's been done.
So then what do we need to make it actually happen?
That is a question for our
yeah, we,
fellows in the room next door.
I think whatever support the committee could, a case that could be built for appropriations as to why these investments make sense. I think that would be maybe something the committee could be very helpful is.
So maybe we, in
Yeah.
conjunction with judiciary too.
well, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So I'm wondering if perhaps we get feedback on what appropriations is expecting of us as a committee this year. I know we had done a letter last year.
Yep.
So if we're doing that again, I think we've all already identified that we'd like to cover this
Yeah,
topic in some form.
Well, the House is asked to do that, as you know, in every committee.
Yeah, so I don't know if we're gonna be asked to do that again, but if so, it makes obvious.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I know one last thing I just want to sneak into the time is of the essence here. We do have some changes to the retirement system that we have asked your colleagues to introduce. And a couple of them are really important. Well, a bigger one would be to continue to move Group G, which is mental health workers and corrections workers, closer to Group C, which is law enforcement. And that would be a reduction in the cost to our members. The contribution rate is much higher for Group G. And it would also be a change in the retirement eligibility age. The second is, this is one that's really particularly important for your constituents of Rutland, Mr. Chairman. The trainers at the Criminal Justice Training Council have to be law enforcement officers, but those positions are in Group F, and law enforcement officers are in Group C. And there are no willing law enforcement officers who would leave Group C to go to a position that's in Group F.
This very reason.
And it was raised to us by the staff at the Criminal Justice Training Council in Pittsburgh. And so that would be, they would like to be in Group C so that there's consistency and that they could fill those positions. Training law enforcement obviously is a very important component of public safety. So we would encourage you to take that up. And the last thing that I just would say, and this is a lot of it does relate to corrections, but it is across the board. We've had members who are in corrections who have been assaulted, or members who have worked in other agencies who have had workplace injuries and who have had to, some within years of reaching full retirement, who have had to make a serious reduction in their retirement, a disability retirement, just much less than a full retirement. No fault of their own, they were assaulted by a correctional officer. It was assaulted by an, yeah, they could have been assaulted by a correctional. They were assaulted by
All
an,
things are there.
so we would like to have an exception made, so that if you are injured on the job or assaulted, because our family service workers, natural resources folks, ESD folks, they get assaulted as well. If you're assaulted and disabled as a result of that assault, that you would get a full retirement and not be punished because somebody assaulted you while you were trying to do your job as a state official.
So we're gonna have sheriffs and state attorneys in on Thursday. What you could do, which I think would be helpful for the committee, and you've given us a lot of suggestions, is put a pencil to how much it would cost to get any of this accomplished. Because I'm sure it's not gonna be without some extra funding that isn't there now.
Yeah, Vince is happy to pony up. He's got plenty of cash.
Oh, there you go.
He has a tax.
Actually, the thing in conjunction with that is I actually appreciate you typing up that list and getting it to all of us.
Okay.
And flushing that.
Nice email follow-up, yeah.
Nice email follow.
We will do that.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
thanks, Steve.
Nice to see you.
Vince, you timed it out perfectly. You don't have to stay hard.
Filibuster. Filibuster.
Thank you.
That was good. Leave it there.
I'll do it.
Hi, Vin.
We've been through the training. Now he knows to say thank you, hello, goodbye.
Hi.
So our next witness is, or witnesses, let's just see.
Bye, Vin.
Yes,
Are from the Secretary of State's office. And Lori Hibbert will now join us, as well as Jen Colin, is it?
Hi,
Yeah. And you can grab two chairs. They know the drill.
if there are two chairs.
Oh, yeah.
If not, we go steal them.
We're resourceful.
Yeah, we're very resourceful in this thing.
So welcome. We'll just, for purposes of getting to know each other, go around the table, and we have a new senator on the committee.
And a new committee assistant.
Yeah.
Senator John Wally from Wallace.
Nice to meet you. Welcome.
And this is Emery Matthias. Yes, sir. Who moved over from legislative operations to committees.
I'm Lauren Hibbert, Deputy Secretary of State, and I have Jen Colin, the Director of the Office of Professional Regulation. I'll say that again when we're on the record. Are we on the record?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, good. Thank you so much for having me, and it's really exciting to get to meet your newest member. And wonderful to be back here. You know, it feels like you guys go away and we miss you.
Tell us. Sure.
We do. We've done a lot of work in the off session on quite a few issues. I'm here mainly to talk about the Secretary of State priorities for this legislative session.
Do they have those typed up for us to look at?
We did. We filed testimony related to OPR, which is probably the biggest list of priorities. And that's why Jen is here. But outside of OPR, you know, our biggest priorities are to not have an elections bill because it's an election year. So we do know that there is
a bill, as you know, circulating.
yes. That's on the
think it's on Citizens United.
No, that
They're
will
not-
probably go to a different committee, but there are.
The
there is a-
Voter Rights
Yeah.
Act one.
Oh, the voters' rights one, right?
Yeah, we support that bill, but changes to how elections operate is a different thing.
And much more difficult for you in a year when you're actually in process already.
Exactly, yes. You know, we are watching the elections bills if they come up, but on whole, we really don't want significant changes to election process this year. The Citizens United issue could be complicated for us. We'll have to see how that bill what it looks like. And then the Voter Rights Act, we support and think it's a good, good bill, good concept. Business services, we won't have a bill this year, hopefully, unless something pops up. Basara, we know that there's conversations about public records. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, let me split down. Let me tell you a little bit about the Secretary of State's office. We oversee 4 major divisions of state government. Elections, that's probably the one you will be most familiar with or are familiar with. Business services, so every business, nonprofit in the state needs to register with the Secretary of State's office. The Office of Professional Regulation, which is called OPR colloquially, we regulate 54 different professions, over 160 different profession types there. You'll hear a lot more about that office. And then the Vermont State Archives and Records Center, which is in Middlesex, and they help state and local entities maintain their records and store their records appropriately, destroy their records appropriately. And then they have the archives, which are, you know, our most important documents that we want to keep forever. We have the original Constitution there. And if you're ever interested in a tour of the archives, we love to coordinate that.
It was one of our best field trips.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's fascinating. So with Basara, and that's called Basara. With Basara, we're aware that there may be some changes to real estate transactions that we're watching because of the digitization of land records that we're working on, and obviously monitoring any changes to public records on whole. Which I hear there may be some changes coming with public records. So we'll be watching that. In terms of the big bill, we do need support for elections. We always have historically received additional support during election years out of the general fund. Our federal grants have disappeared essentially. We used to get $1 million a year. We're now getting 1/3 of that. 275 is the small state minimum. And the threats to our elections haven't changed in terms of foreign actors and domestic actors, and the infrastructure that's needed to implement elections across the entire state for both the statewide primary and the general election. So outside of what we historically have received this year, we're not anticipating a larger ask.
So your revenue is holding steady.
We are okay for another year. But we do need to forecast to this body that without additional federal funds coming, we will be in a very different position next year and the year after that.
What was the bill that was so lucrative for the elections? That Make America was,
HAVA,
yes,
Help Americans Vote Act, yes.
yes, Health Americans. So,
And that is what has been giving us
right,
this
the
grant.
$1 million a year.
And we have been using it to implement universal vote by mail, to implement our IT systems, to implement tabulators in every community that has over 1,000 voters, and the disability access ballot machines. So it's pretty critical funding for us. And without it, it's really a struggle. We've lost a lot of federal resources in the election space, quite frankly,
That makes no sense.
Doesn't that make sense? It is challenging. And every state is grappling with it.
Yeah.
You know, the pressure and the vulnerability of Vermont's election system is the same as it is in California. Because the same like security parameters from an IT perspective need to be around our system as in California. They just have a lot more money and a lot more people. So it's just one of those small state problems that we have, is that our infrastructure needs to be the same, regardless of the number of people we have. So money, the elections ask. We created a position last year in our General Counsel Municipal Services Division, which has just been transformational. When it went through, it was created as a limited services position. We really need that to become a permanent position in terms of our responsive times on public records requests, on inquiries. It's been dramatic. The person who we've hired is fabulous. And we need that position for the long term. So we're going to be asking for that and seeking another position in our business services division as well. That is a division with 5 people who are primarily responsible. Well, the division of 6, but 5 people responsible for all of the filings and 1 director. And the volume is just not sustainable. So in terms of positions, making sure that we get that limited services to permanent and then 1 position. And then OPR, we have a lot of objectives at OPR. Some of them you've heard quite a bit about. Some of them are old friends or new friends.
Our old friends still, we need to continue to work on it.
Yes, we like to make new friends, but keep the old, right?
Well,
and maybe get them
finished. We need to finish one.
Up down the trail.
That is one of our old friends, yes. But as I mentioned, the Office of Professional Regulation, our core focus is to protect the public. So we license professionals, everyone from cosmetologists to engineers, real estate to dentists. It's really a diverse group of professions. And the reason why we regulate professions as a state is that the public needs to be protected from that profession. Meaning if the person is not qualified, they can do substantial harm.
Mr. Chair. Yes.
I've actually dealt with OPR some.
Oh, good. Hopefully it was okay.
No.
Okay. Well, shoot. How can I solve
It
it?
was OPR, but it finally worked out. We lost a wastewater treatment operator.
Mhm.
And so then we sent them to school, and so then they passed the exams and we couldn't get their license at OPR. We really struggled with that. It took months.
I think there was an issue there for a while. I'd have to look into.
No. It's going over now, but
Well,
because we're being mandated by the state to have this, and then we couldn't get it from the state. So
and they had passed their exam.
Yeah. Because you take tests as a contracting entity that does this now, and I don't know where they're from, but they come to Burlington like once a month or something like that.
Oh, they administer the test.
Yeah, and so there was a lot of hangups just dealing with the wastewater side of things. So,
I was familiar with that
Okay.
issue, but not enough to.
no. I didn't know if you knew it was.
Yep, no, we did. So we took over wastewater treatment from
Correct.
DEC.
Correct.
And in that transition, several pebbles got turned over that we had to address. It's interesting, whenever we start a new profession or start regulating the profession within OPR, we learn a lot. And I think DEC was those DEC professions was one of them.
Yeah.
And there were some hurdles. And honestly, the requirements for wastewater treatment are confusing and are difficult to explain and also difficult to do. So probably with some good reason, but
No, anyways, it all got resolved, and I just didn't know if you guys.
yeah, I was director probably at that time because I previously was the director of Office of Professional Regulation. So I was very familiar with that issue. But
Thanks.
I also recognize that it creates, when there is a barrier within our office, whether it's in elections, FASARA, business services, or OPR, it creates real world implications for people. So since you're new, if you ever have a constituent who is having an issue, please let me know. And I do really make a very concerted effort to try and smooth over the issue or understand the issue so that you can talk about the issue either with other legislators, if there's a legislative fix, or with your constituents so they can understand.
Of the village board.
And
And a former legislator. We were in the house together.
oh, well, good. Well, I'm available for those purposes if need be. Hopefully not, but this session, we're really excited to move forward with a OPR agenda. And there's three main themes, which are creating new professional pathways, removing unnecessary regulatory barriers, and strengthening public protection. That's really our core focus. And I'm going to let Jen talk about those themes.
And hello, Jen Colin, Director of OPR. That's a new thing since this summer. Previously, when I was with you all last year, I was general counsel. So
That's
We're
an
ecstatic.
update.
and we do have our new general counsel with us. This is Emily Carr. So you'll be seeing Emily some this session as well. And we're very fortunate to have her. She came from the Department of Corrections. So very fortunate to have her expertise at OPR.
Were you in the general counsel's office at?
Yeah, the first 6 years and then in their litigation unit for 12 years before that.
She knows a lot.
We
POC
are-
and a lot about OPR now.
And we're in a very fortunate position to have them both in their respective positions.
So, first theme for the year, creating new professional pathways. We spent a lot of time with y'all last session talking about early childhood educators, and that's an old friend that's back this year, and hopefully we can move that across the finish line. So that early childhood educator is going to be a standalone bill, and it would create individual licensure credentials for early childhood educators who are working in non-public settings. And those settings are regulated by the Child Development Division. So these are educators who are working in family child care homes, and they're working at the center-based facilities in those private settings. So
But we already have a bill.
Yeah. So what has happened is
We've been rewriting it.
we have been because you voted on it on the Senate floor, we needed a new bill. Because of the Senate rules, so we have to have a new bill number, and it's being started. My understanding is it's being started in Senate Health and Welfare and will come here. And I don't know the logistics of that.
Why?
I think that was the path that the pro tem and
Well, we're the ones who did the work.
Yeah, I guess we're a bit, maybe Mr. Chair, maybe we table this discussion for this particular logistics because I think we may not have fully communicated or understood what's going on with that. And
Yeah.
I don't know where.
Because I didn't know who.
See, I had heard it was gonna start in the house.
Yeah, there's a lot
So
of,
we can absolutely talk about it, but my understanding is because it was voted, the issue in full substance of S-119 was voted out of the Senate, that it can't, but then didn't go anywhere. And never became it's not a bill anymore because because it was joined with the OPR bill, which was passed.
Right.
That now that language is sort of an orphan. And because of that, it's orphan. Because of its orphan status, it needs to have a new bill. So we worked on a new bill
With whom?
Senator Lyons
Because. Anyway, that's.
and legislative council.
challenging. Okay.
And its policy is substantially the same.
Right.
As
But
it-
they
as what-
didn't pass it out of their committee. We did.
Correct. And so the thought was if it went through a new committee first, that it would be by Senate rules seen as more different than S-119.
well, we wish you luck, I guess. That's kind of that might be my take. Like, I'm surprised to hear this based on, I think I'm a little hurt in a way that we were not given information about this, seeing that we spent.
Or for a long time.
Yeah.
Or even did it together.
Yeah,
Well,
but that's maybe a private discussion. Publicly, I would say we are at least fully supportive, at least out the Windsor County delegation.
Yeah.
And I wish you luck in health and welfare on this topic.
And we hope that you help us. And I believe that Senator Lyons is going to seek your support on that bill.
Is there anything different about it?
In terms of policy, no. Some wording, yes, but policy, it's exactly. the
There's
same.
still I remember 8-year.
Yes.
Yes.
So you'll hear about this in the morning.
Okay.
So we still count on you to be our secret weapon there, John.
And I would
Right.
imagine it would come here too. I don't think it would be exclusively heard there. I think it would come here too.
I just, yeah, given that we're the parents of it, I think that would be good.
Senator Bielski.
Was the bill voted down in the House? I'm confused.
It was separated.
It was pulled apart.
The bill was pulled apart.
I don't think I ever went to that.
It did.
Yeah, we
It
voted
did.
it out.
So the process was, it was combined with the OPR bill here.
Right.
Then the Senate voted on the whole package. Then it went to the House. The House did not have time to talk about early childhood education because it was not part of their bill that came over here. And so in order to get the OPR bill passed, early childhood education was cut on the House floor. And so the Senate has voted on the language and the House did not.
It's ejected.
And there was not a House bill, corresponding House bill that moved on the House side.
Okay.
And when you ask why you need corresponding bills,
That is why.
that's,
And why can't the House Committee of Jurisdiction put it in a committee bill and deal with it?
because it's still alive. I mean, it's still,
Yeah.
you're right. It's an interesting question.
I have to confess, I'm not an expert on the Senate
Oh.
rules. I just was told this is what needed to happen.
Okay, great.
And I didn't because-
I will follow along with our.
That the bill, that the same bill cannot be introduced twice in the same biennium if it has already made, like, so I don't even, like, but that's fine. I can talk to Bloomer and figure out what's happening.
Well, and Betsy Ann, because quite honestly, the challenge happened in that.
Right, but my understanding is introducing the exact same language that we have already acted on is against Senate rules.
Well,
Right.
it can be incorporated in some changes. The language has been changed, yeah.
Right, but I mean, if you've changed a few words, that doesn't constitute changing the policy. You said the policy is exactly the same. My understanding is that that is against Senate rules, but I can take that up with John.
Okay, well, moving on to the next thing on the OPR's legislative agenda. And sorry for just, tossing out that controversy first thing, but, so in the dental profession, we're going to be, moving forward a new limited scope academic dental license for dental faculty. So we heard the good news that there's a dental school that wants to open a satellite location in Vermont, which is fantastic.
Down this path. The dental therapy path.
No, this isn't dental therapy. This is for dental faculty. And so this is for folks who are dentists, probably in other jurisdictions, and they're going to come to Vermont. They're going to be faculty at a school. We're giving them, we'd like to offer a limited scope license for dental faculty at no cost. Just to encourage that because we're so excited to have a dental school here in Vermont. We need it.
So sort of reciprocal licensing in a way.
Yes, so it allows those practitioners to come in, teach as faculty and work in a dental clinic associated with the school that's providing low and no cost dental services. And those folks would be overseen in that dental clinic by Vermont licensed dentists. So that's an exciting thing that we're doing. Next in psychology, and this is an old friend, but I don't think y'all saw this friend last year. We have there's going to be a bill. It's not part of the OPR bill. It's going to be a standalone bill. It's a specialty to expand the scope of practice for doctorate level psychologists to be able to prescribe mental health medications for mental health treatment. And those folks, as part of their getting a specialty license, would have to get special education, training, experience to be able to be qualified for that. So that bill did pass the House last year, and it's going to be starting in the Senate this year. I think that's H237.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
And that is with us or in?
It's in Senate Health and Welfare.
Oh, okay. So we.
Then we have our friends optometry as well. So that also was introduced last year in the Senate. That's going to move forward this year in the House. That's a bill that expands the scope of practice for specially trained optometrists to be able to perform specified surgical procedures and injection procedures. And I hope I won't have to pronounce those in front of this committee, but the bill does contain like all the different procedures they can do and that specialized training.
And what's different about the agreement between the ophthalmologists and the optometrists this year? How are we gonna make that move forward?
That's a great question, and I don't really know the answer to that, other than this is a bill that we support for optometrists because we've worked with those optometry folks and firmly believe through our lens of public protection that the training, education, and experience that they have to have is adequate for public protection. And we did do a lot of work with the optometrist group. So
Senator White.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we passed S64 last year out of this committee.
Yes.
It's in health and welfare,
It's stuck in.
but you had just said that it's starting in the House.
I thought it was, but I could be mistaken about that. I thought it passed the Senate last year, but
I thought it was gonna
I
be
think it's
picked up by.
still in health and
Oh,
welfare.
okay.
So
So,
again,
okay.
It's stuck.
you
my
can
mistake.
hear all
Yeah,
about it.
My understanding is it is gonna be unstuck, that we ran out of time.
Rolling and as our unsticker. You're gonna be our Google person, you know, it's gonna take Google on and.
Remember, this is my friend.
Well,
They're charging me with a lot of it.
my understanding is that it was really a timing issue
Oh.
because there's a lot of testimony that needs to be taken on this. So, it was a run out of
The timing issue. That seems simpler than.
yes.
Well, and speaking of timing, I just want to, we're doing HGO at 3:00. So, I'm gonna kind of rush through this a little bit. Happy to have your questions,
It
but
won't be the first time the House has had to wait.
yes, and certainly they can still wait for us for a few minutes. So our next theme of removing unnecessary regulatory barriers, along those lines in the profession of pharmacy, we are planning to remove a requirement that vaccines that are prescribed by pharmacists and administered by pharmacy professionals, that those vaccines are limited to vaccines recommended by the CDC's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices. That's the ACIP body
Still?
that was disbanded over the summer, late summer, I think, by the federal government, and then they put new members into that body. But this legislation would and you're going to see a bill from Department of Health along the same lines. This would basically be allowing pharmacists to prescribe and pharmacy professionals to administer vaccines that the Vermont Department of Health Commissioner approves based upon recommendations from various bodies.
There's there's that, and there's another pharmacy ask, I believe, that is coming down the pike.
I'm sure there is.
There's always a pharmacy
Yeah,
act.
there's a lot of pharmacy
But
act.
when we expanded the scope of practice for pharmacists, we really hinged it on ACIP, thinking that it was going to remain consistent, and it just hasn't remained consistent. So this is a response to that inconsistency.
ACIP, remind me what that is.
That's the
Advisory Committee on Immunization
Oh, right.
Practices, it's in the CDC.
Right.
Yes.
Anything in the CDC now, sadly, is just completely suspect.
Yeah. So then also along the lines of removing unnecessary regulatory barriers in funeral services, the OPR bill is going to include services such as cremation and natural organic reduction in the definition of the practice of funeral services, so that
Services, not like scripture and organ music. Which sounds.
that's right, not
I'm being service.
That's right.
It was like, oh,
so was that the
the
reason.
homily has to be 5 minutes.
The reason that we're doing that is because there was some confusion among licensed funeral directors, whether those things fell within the scope of what they could do. So we're clarifying the definitions so that they don't have to get another license to be able to do those services. And then in midwives, we're going to be seeking authority to reduce current practice data reporting requirements. Midwives have to report data on every single birth that they attend, and it's a lot of data. And they have to do that as part of their renewal right now, every 2 years. So for every birth, every 2 years, they have to give us a lot of information. We'd like to be able to change those requirements by rule. And to reduce the barrier, to reduce the burden on midwives.
We want to know that information.
Well, we do want to know every birth that they attend, and the Department of Health knows that they're receiving.
Oh, so it's duplicative.
It's duplicative, and
That's different.
and we have a separate requirement that if there's any adverse outcome,
okay.
we are required to receive it. So, but if it's a totally typical birth, they're having to create data for us and Department of Health. And quite frankly, people aren't using it in any way. It's from when midwives were originally licensed, a requirement that was required because people were really unsure of the safety and wanted a lot of data. Well, that just hasn't been a problem, and that data doesn't appear.
So then how is that data from midwife births recorded? They have to do it with the department. of Health,
Yes, they
Just not with you.
yeah.
So
that-
duplicative with you. I
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah.
And then in terms of strengthening public protection, we're going to be seeking to regulate massage establishments. Right now, we regulate massage therapists and other body work professionals. But this year, the legislation will be including regulating massage establishments through registration credentials that allows for inspection and requires the display of credentials of individuals working in the establishments. And that's kind of a tool in the tool belt to fight human trafficking. So,
But we've done this every year for the last 5 years, I feel like.
This is different though. This is like a STARS program for them.
Yeah.
You know, this is like an establishment. It's like for their business, if I'm
Yeah,
understanding the difference.
we've done individualized
Right.
registration, but we've never
Right.
done business registration.
Okay, so this is a business register.
And it is a change in the position of OPR. When we did our Sunrise, we did not recommend registration of the business, but since we have been regulating massage therapy, we have seen, and you probably remember from last year, our registry of complaints where you could see all of the
Right.
things that were complained about. And you know,
Which was fascinating
it's heartbreakingly
Horrifying.
fascinating.
and horrifying.
Yes, horrifyingly heartbreaking. I don't know the right word, but it's bad. And about a third of our complaints are related to human trafficking, and about a third are related to sexual misconduct. And so we do think that registration of the business, as Director Cullen just said, would be a tool for law enforcement and for our office to be able to better investigate.
And for
human-
consumers.
And
So if you know, yeah.
So anybody else?
I have a question about this, and then once you're done, I might have a broader question. If someone was a private practice, and would they have to do both registrations, the individual and the business?
solo practitioners will not have to
Okay.
register a business. They're going to be,
Okay.
we gave them an exception.
Or is that a good thing?
Well, I
Yeah.
think so, because it's duplicative if you're registering.
Yeah, you just do one.
You're registered. You're the
I
only
appreciate
one
it,
there.
but I want to know if you're going to have a star. I mean, I want to know that establishment is got a star or 2 stars or 3 stars or 4
oh,
stars.
we're not doing stars on the businesses,
Okay.
but it's a register.
Bad. It's very useful for consumers.
It is, yeah. But if there's a business that is registered with us who is operating and is really doing human trafficking as opposed to legitimate massage services, then we'll be able to suspend, revoke, or condition that business. And that's a really powerful
That is
tool
very,
that we currently don't have. And this legislation gives us the authority to inspect that business, to walk in. And we don't currently have that as firmly cemented as we would like it to be from a Fourth Amendment standpoint. So it's just it's going to add to the toolbox. We know that human trafficking is a problem here,
we've
And growing.
and we've known it for a long time.
Yeah, and just to be clear, by stars, I meant how childcare facilities have the stars.
no, I like stars. It's very useful from a consumer point of view to know how good the practice is.
I don't think OPR is in the habit of reviewing business.
First choice, touching the quality.
We always say OPR is the floor, not the ceiling. So what are the minimum standards that somebody has to abide by to provide safe and appropriate care?
There will be no Yelp reviews paid.
That's right.
That's right. With John being new to this, you might just review the 3 levels at which you license or not license. I mean,
Right.
the bridge
So
and
we
the
have
lowest.
credentials, that's right. So registration, and that's what's proposed for massage establishments. Registration requires no qualifications, but everybody who's doing that professional activity has to register with us. And that enables us to take enforcement action and remove people from the marketplace if they engage in bad conduct like sexual stuff in massage establishments. We have certification. Certification is voluntary, but it does have requirements like qualifications. So if you want to call yourself a certified dietitian, you have to meet certain competency requirements, and we will give you that state certification so that you can hold yourself out in the marketplace as having specialized knowledge. And then we have licensure, which is a mandatory thing for people doing that professional activity. And that requires qualifications that often include education, experience, examination, that sort of thing. So those are the 3 levels that we use to regulate and keep Vermonters safe.
And those discussions are very robust in this committee.
So a couple more points on strengthening public protection. In our unprofessional conduct statutes, we have a mandatory reporting requirement that healthcare facilities have to file a report with OPR if they have a licensee whose practice, whose ability to practice within that facility has been curtailed for some reason. So in other words, if your privileges are being removed by your facility, that facility needs to report it to us. We're just clarifying the language in there because there's a double negative in the statute that makes it seem a little unclear when those facilities have to do that. So we're clarifying that. And then the last thing is we want authority to establish through rulemaking a voluntary alternative to discipline program. This is a program, we have this type of program in one profession, that's nursing. And essentially it's got 2 arms. One is if someone has a substance use disorder and they want to engage in monitoring to ensure that their practice isn't impacted, their professional practice isn't impacted, they can kind of self-report to OPR voluntarily and engage in a program whereby we are connected with their drug testing facility. So we know that they're having drug tests. They have to have an evaluation for substance use. And so again, that's a voluntary program, but what it does is it encourages professionals to kind of seek help before it becomes a practice problem. So if you have complaints against you, you're not eligible. This is for somebody who's recognizing they have a problem and they don't want it to impact their practice. And we can have that kind of assistance to them. And then the other thing is in this alternative to discipline program, if someone has had practice deficiencies that have resulted in a complaint, but they are very minor, and it's something that's could be remediated through additional education, taking a class, it gives us the ability to refer those cases to a program so that they get that education, but they don't necessarily have a permanent ding against their license. So, it just gives us another tool in our tool belt to make sure that Vermonters are safe from kind of professionals that make mistakes or have practice issues. So we're really excited about those efforts. And that's it from OPR.
So, wait.
You may have been quick on the draw, but so I apologize. I used the restroom right at the beginning, so you may have talked about this, but I do think that we're going to discuss potentially voting and elections this year.
Yes.
And I know that traditionally has been like a no-go. because I think rightly so, we don't want to change something right before an election and cause
Yeah.
any confusion. I'm wondering if you have any thoughts or reflections on that statement?
So
Yeah.
we're aware of two issues that are percolating, one related to campaign finance and one related to the Voter Rights Act.
Yeah.
We support the Voter Rights Act bill and moving this session because it doesn't change the substance of how we conduct elections.
Okay.
And that's really important. The campaign finance one, we haven't seen the final language and we don't know the ramifications of that. So we need to understand that a bit better. Changing how, and it may be an effective date issue. It may be, I just don't know. We haven't seen it. So
Really, I like what you said, but it doesn't, the difference might be that it's not changing your electioneering.
right.
Or a
it's-
process of
The
Yeah.
operationalization of an
Right.
election.
That makes-
So as I said, and maybe we should sit down outside. I think
Yeah.
it's myself and Senator Watson that are looking at that, but it actually likely will not come to this committee because it's not a campaign finance issue. It's a regulation of corporations issue.
Oh, okay. Well, that is us too. So
Yes, but
yes.
I recognize that, but
That would end up with me.
I know. So maybe you should join the conversation as well.
Perhaps I should.
Okay, I
I
know
look
you're
forward to it.
late getting upstairs.
I actually still had a question,
Sure.
and that was about the mental health workforce report that
Yeah.
last year we heard we would be dealing with this year, but was not in your presentation.
Yeah. That's because as we started to grapple with that, it's a huge statutory lift. We're worried that it would take more than 1 year, one session. And we have just hired an executive officer for mental health. That took a while to create the position, to hire the position, to recruit for the position. She's starting after in February. And so we didn't want to start that work without her. And it is really a big bill. We're going to be looking for sponsors on that. And we'll start on both sides. But it's a huge revision of all of the mental health statutes, and it did not seem like we were going to be able to get it through all of the process this session. And so given that, we thought it would be better to start it next session. We are also doing a lot of engagement with all of our mental health boards and reaching out to the Department of Mental Health. There's also some stakeholder engagement that we didn't feel like was fully ripe before we pushed the legislative agenda. So that's the why. We're happy to talk about it more and what we're thinking. It is a very big priority for OPR to get that done. I would say next session, that is the priority. Unless ECE doesn't go anywhere, in which case that will be our other priority. But mental health reorganization is of critical importance from our perspective, both really in the workforce. It's desperately needed, but also within our office, sort of the complicated structure creates problems for us. And we'd like to streamline quite a few things and create some options for people who didn't have a degree that was perfect in the current requirements, some abilities for them to make up those deficiencies. We just don't have that flexibility right now, and it's holding people back from being able to provide care.
So a follow-up to that, because I'm sure it comes as no surprise to you that it's a huge priority for me as well.
I believe that we are doing that because of your bill.
You in fact are. Are there any, because I have actually now read I don't remember if it was 87 or 93, like very long report. And I wonder if from your perspective, there are any sort of lower hanging fruit that we can pick off this year to start to make some of the moves in that direction.
I'll have to talk to the team and see that. I don't have an answer for you off the top of my head. But we've been seeing it as a package. I'll tell you candidly, we've been seeing it as a package, but that doesn't necessarily have to remain true. And we have been making changes already that don't require legislative change, or rule changes as a response to legislative change. So, we recognize that there's a lot to do in that space.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lauren. Thank you, Jen.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And you're gonna send those to us, I hope for now, all those priorities.
They're in.
Oh,
they're already-
okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Thanks. And I'm going to call you this.
Good to see you.
Yeah, we'll chat.
Anything else, committee?
I apologize. I just feel like this weather front is just moving my head. I forgot.
It's a big day.
No, just the weather front. I mean, we're getting 4 inches supposedly.
I thought it was gonna be like 45 degrees
Yeah,
this week.
we're not getting any snow.
It's
Yeah,
gonna
we're
rain.
supposed to get 4 inches tonight, aren't we, Justin?
I would agree.
Thank you, Justin.
That's what I thought.
That's what I saw too. That's what Vermont Public told me this morning.
I think Vermont Public was lying to you.
It never lies to me.
We're still live. Of course they were.
Okay,
Okay.
With that said,
Right here.
don't forget, we will not meet tomorrow. I'm assuming that the governor's speech will go an hour, so.
At least, given all the things we have to discuss.
So we'll adjourn for the day and we'll see all of you Thursday.